Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the lovely introduction. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning to take you on a grand adventure. We're going to be taking a tour of Route 66, the Grand Canyon, and Zion National Park. Of course, doing it on a motorbike. So let's hop on over and get started with our trip. Just fire up the slides here, and then we should be ready to go. Okay, the grand road trip. Touring the Grand Canyon, Route 66, and Zion National Park. First up, as you heard earlier, my name is Mary Charlson, and I've made my living as a marketing consultant for the last 20 years at Charlson Communications and 5minutemarketing.com. But over the last couple of years, I have launched a website called CarryOnQueen, kind of after the notion that I always carried a suitcase, only one small bag that I refused to check and took it as a carry-on on planes. And so that's the way I've always traveled, is traveling light. And so I've had a tremendous amount of fun and also kind of turning into a bit of a business venture of late, chasing down trips and documenting them and working with clients, creating content on CarryOnQueen.com. So that's some of the stuff I'm going to be sharing with you today. So here we are, traveling by car, motorbike, or even reviving past, adventures, reliving them on the road through photos. It seems like an ideal kind of anecdote to the doom and gloom and restrictions that we find ourselves in, kind of with the daily news around COVID and around the pandemic. Well, local travel is favorite option right now. It's fun to reflect on the magic of what makes those journeys so special. And along the way, experience a fresh take on our planet right now. It's a vivid, delightful testament to why the world is, in essence, still a wonderful place, and how its people are inseparable parts of that experience. And let's just face it, travel is just wondrous fun. So today we're going to travel by road along part of Route 66, the original part, and visit the Grand Canyon as well as Zion National Park. You're going to join me on a motorbike, along with my husband, Chris. But this trip could be done on 4 wheels just as easily as 2, except 2 wheels, it's a heck of a lot more fun, and the freedom if you're up for it. In preparing for this presentation, I was reflecting on just what it is that makes road trips so special. Tell me if any of these resonate with you. It's that whole exploration, right? There's something very freeing that comes from the trio of you, your vehicle, and the destination unknown. Traveling the open road is first and foremost about exploration. The full tank of gas, the thirst for adventure that touches the soul and ignites freedom and independence like nothing else can. It's really at the heart of the road trip. While many trips, in the past may have been taken by plane in particular, it's about the destination. Road trips are just as much about the journey. It's where you go, and it's also where you didn't plan to go, but went anyway. The characters that you meet along the way, the music that was playing, and the stories and the conversation shared with just those who were with you. That's some of the stuff that makes road trips so special. It's also that independence, right? The freedom, it changes the mood. And since freedom is on some level what we've been denied this year during the pandemic, reclaiming it on the road, to me, is a psychological win. Seeing the road kind of open up in front of you, lies ahead, around the next bend, creates a real special atmosphere like few other activities. Having your own vehicle offers independence to go where you want to go, but also the free, to have the healthy space, which is so important right now. It's a whole other benefit that we wouldn't have previously considered. Plus, at the wheel, there's a certain kind of liberty that you get. When you're not part of a guided tour, you're in a small, intimate way, you have the freedom to do what you want to do. It's independence that drives exploration. And that holds infinite possibility. You also get to pick your company, right? You can go solo, in pairs, in groups, well, at least pairs on a motorbike, spouse or friends, right? The magic, truly, of road trips is in the company. The conversations at the wheel and the shared experiences along the way. Of course, the accommodations, whether it be in a motel, towing a trailer, packing a tent, driving an RV, road trips offer so many different options. But really, it's about the people that you meet, right? You can't take a road trip without interacting with some locals along the way, whether it be the local diner, gassing up, buying groceries at the market, the conversations on the hiking trail. Nothing allows you to really connect with the locals quite like a road trip. So here we go. Route 66 to the Grand Canyon and Zion National Park. But first, let's start in Vegas, because as you know, all good stories start and end in Vegas. We flew to Vegas from Vancouver, rented a motorbike from there, and then spent a couple of days at the end of our trip kind of lapping up the luxury before returning to Vancouver. As the CarryOnQueen, my motto is pack light and experience more. Yep, I take one bag when I travel, and it's a carry-on. But one small bag presented a serious packing challenge on this trip, even though it was just 1 week. I've done 4-week trips to Europe, and I've done 6 weeks in Australia, combining kite surfing and working, and still managed to do it all in a carry-on. But this one had a mix of activities to plan for that required some kind of bulky gear, as well as being able to kind of dress up and go out at night in Vegas. So we were motorbiking, we were hiking, we were poolside in a resort, and we were going out in Vegas. And it all kind of had to fit in one bag. As for the first leg, it all had to fit into a motorbike bag, either a side bag or a top box. And we each got one of those side bags. However, we were also able to leave our carry-on bag at the motorbike rental place to kind of leave some of our Vegas gear, right? So we only took our motorbiking and our hiking gear on the bike. But still, it was almost like one of those George Carlin, right? Like your bag of stuff and then your smaller bag of stuff kind of thing. It's like we had to kind of compartmentalize even further to get onto the bike. But that's what I love doing. And, travel light, experience more. So, this is my husband and myself when we're geared up, ready to leave the rental place. I don't take the back seat easily, but on this trip I did. My husband was the driver and I was on the back riding. We rented a 1200 Triumph motorbike out of Vegas to ride the historical Route 66, Grand Canyon, Zion, did the whole kind of circle route. And it was a shift in kind of comfort zones for me. Although we had been together for almost 30 years, touring on a motorbike was new territory. Chris had been a licensed driver since his teens on a bike, and he'd had bikes on and off sporadically throughout his life, but ownership had escaped us while, raising a family and being tied to, let's face it, a minivan. So unleashing the freedom of the open road and the wind in our face and adventure on the horizon was really quite something to look forward to. And so I hung on tight on the back. But I have a confession to make. As the backseat gal, I loved it. I was amazed at how much more inspiring scenery was when I was completely immersed in it, surrounded by it, free of obstruction, and fully exposed. But it was the unexpected gift of the hours of reflection and quiet thought, together, yet in our own worlds, with conversations that were saved for later. Since it was pretty hard to do anything else when you're on the back of a bike, except tap a shoulder, shout a short message above the sounds of the wind and the open road. But it was that quiet reflection time which was the unexpected gift. So our first leg, we headed out of Vegas and had a stop at the Hoover Dam. It's a pretty magnificent piece of engineering if you've never seen it. And our final destination that night was to be Kingman, Arizona. But we stopped at Lake Mead and had a tour of the Hoover Dam, which borders Nevada and Arizona. The dam was constructed in the 1930s depression. It's the sheer magnitude of the dam engineering to hold the water, nature's water forces at bay is pretty darn impressive. And the highway spans over the river, and you can sort of see the dam below. From the Hoover Dam, we drove, where we were going to be staying that night. We ventured along Route 66 towards Kingman and to Seligman. It was going to be our destination the following morning. Route 40 is now the most kind of direct route along here. But the old Route 66 goes up along this way, and then the southern leg of it goes down this way as it goes out towards LA. We can, I had found, I went looking for, I wanted kind of the quintessential Route 66 roadside motel experience, for lack of a better word. So I went researching and I found this one called the El Trovatore Motel. Promised to be a great little place. It was in Kingman, Arizona. It was abandoned in the early 90s. It was kind of a victim of the real estate meltdown, and it was neglected and forgotten, kind of in its past glory. But it's been recently revived, complete with the whole Art Deco and kind of an iconic 100-foot marquee neon sign. The El Trovatore was built in 1937. It claimed to be the first in the state with air-conditioned rooms and private ensuite bathrooms, a big thing back then. So it attracted the Vegas and the Hollywood celebrities, such as Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, and Elvis Presley. There's a very cool mural, as you can see here, painted across the outdoor rooms, depicting all of the towns and the sites along, from Route 66, from Chicago to LA. Of course, it's now updated with pillow-top beds, the convenience of good Wi-Fi, and the rooms still hold historical charm. As you can see, we stayed in the Elvis room. If those walls could only talk. But there were themed celebrity rooms dotted all along. Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, James Dean. They were all different theme rooms, which made it kind of fun as well. And for those who are patient enough to listen, the quirky owner will recount history and entertain guests with a bevy of stories and nostalgia and memorabilia that really adds to the stay. The original neon sign and painted mural are quite the sight, 100 feet up in the air, kind of beckoning as you approach at night. Pretty cool. Now, the next day, we headed from Kingman to Flagstaff, but note, we took the old Route 66 up along here, not the Route 40, the Highway 40, which is kind of like Google Maps, kind of by default, wouldn't let me even kind of show you this alternative route. And so that was where we got to sort of experience kind of Route 66 in its original glory. And as you can see here, here's the original kind of 66 that goes along here. And it also continues here south of Kingman down towards LA. Iconic sign, Kingman, Seligman, Flagstaff, all kind of stops along the way on Route 66. Probably familiar from the music song around Route 66. Of course, there were the photos to be taken, right in the middle of the highway, which gives you a sense of how open this was for us. Of course, this was actually a little section which had a one-way, so it made it a little easier to take photos. And of course, we got the requisite, shot to frame the memory, and one more for fun. So departing Kingman the next day, we headed out further along historical Route 66 from Kingman to Seligman. It has its fair share of kind of kitschy souvenir shops. It's littered with Burma-shave road signs along the way with their kind of sequential messaging. These have stood the test of time along the stretch of highway. It's kind of an iconic advertising campaign that I found kind of cool, which ran from 1927 to 1963. The whole entertaining signs were about the only thing that kind of broke up the endless road and barren landscape that mapped out before us. But of course, they were part of this, kind of the beginning of the whole burgeoning of road travel. And of course, Burma Shave was a shaving company, but they did all these kind of fun entertainment signs to kind of keep you alert and talking and kind of laughing as you were driving along your roadside. The route is also accented with a bunch of charming mix of old-time diners, complete with road-worn characters saddled up to the bar stools for morning coffee. There's one of them right there. So we stopped at Westside Lilas in Seligman, Arizona. It's their forever full coffee cup was a welcome warm up after a few hours on the bike. And it was Westside Lola's. It was right across the road from the Roadkill Cafe. That was one we decided to give a bit of a miss. There's a lot of original rundown and forgotten places along the way too. No doubt a casualty of the faster Highway 40 when it went in and took traffic away from it. But again, this is kind of part of the iconic appeal of Route 66 as well. On that second day, we toured further along to Route 66 through Williams and then to a larger town called Flagstaff. A lot of people may be familiar with Flagstaff as kind of a place that a lot of folks stay on their way to the Grand Canyon. Flagstaff has a lot of charm, and it's a great base for the south entrance to the Grand Canyon. But it's also at considerable elevation. So ascending the highway into Flagstaff, we encountered a bit of a flash rainstorm that turned to light snow at elevation. Not the greatest combination on a motorbike. But while it was kind of late April in the area, it was generally still quite warm, but the shoulder season can still kind of deliver that unexpected kind of weather. So being on a bike, we had few options, but to kind of continue, and put our risk tolerance to the test. Fortunately, precipitation turned to rain on the descent, and then it became sunny again within hours once we're in Flagstaff. So downtown Flagstaff is historical. As you can see, it's a mountainous area. There's ski resorts. The downtown is quite historical, lots of older buildings, microbreweries, cafes. There's also a university campus in town. In the winter, it gets a lot of ski traffic, but in the summers, its majority is Grand Canyon visitors or people recreating in the area. Now, the South Rim entrance is by far the most popular, which is entered from Flagstaff, but it can get really super busy. And so we had decided to go to the eastern entrance and stay further along on Highway 89 in Tuba City on the Navajo Nation Reserve that night. And so this was on the road up towards that Navajo Nation. It allowed us easy access to the eastern entrance of the park the following morning. And it was not only less busy, but it was beautiful in a barren kind of way on the drive from Tuba City to along Highway 160. But it's a far more, kind of like scenic way to return to the Grand Canyon on the eastern entrance park the following day. So we quite enjoyed it. We stayed at the Quality Inn, one of the few motels in Tuba City on the Navajo Nation lands. Accommodations are kind of few in Tuba City, and it looks pretty sparse on the rocky drive into nowhere as you're going in. But it was comfortable and well priced, which is kind of what our criteria was. The dining options were a little limited in Tuba City. There was a lot of fast food, but the hotel diner the next morning served a fabulous breakfast. But if you're a foodie, yeah, you'd likely enjoy staying in Flagstaff, I suspect, but then still go back in and around to the eastern entrance if you want to avoid some of the crowds. So we went from Tuba City down to the eastern entrance here. If we take a look on the map, you'll see all these red signs. Simply that is just a current screen save, which indicates that the eastern entrance right now due to COVID is closed. But you can see we did a slight backtrack there to get back to the eastern entrance. That eastern entrance proved to be a great choice. We came in there in the morning, kind of arrived mid-morning, in spectacular sun and colors. Very few tour buses at all. There was maybe one or two that we were sort of meeting as we were leaving the park. Hardly anybody there except for a few cars in the morning. So it proved to be a really, really great choice that way. It was a tip that I got out of the Lonely Planet guidebooks that suggested the eastern entrance would be better. So, it's hard to do the Grand Canyon justice in photos. It's just that expansive. And as you can see in this, it's just spectacular, the layers of colors. And we spent a large part of the next morning exploring the Grand Canyon and hiking into the Shoshone Point area, which is kind of a nice kind of I would say, half-day hike. There's no official trailhead or signpost. But again, with the Lonely Planet guide for hiking, we were able to kind of locate an area where a few cars were parked, which indicated that's kind of the secret entrance into Shushan Point. Well worth taking a hike in. Again, because there's no crowds. There was hardly anybody there as the lookout. Great way to get away from them. And as you can see, we spent there was hardly anybody else around, right? Our only regret was not having taken more time to actually hike down into the canyon and experience an overnight stay along the Colorado River. It's a mile deep from the rim. If you can fathom that, a mile down from the rim of the canyon. It's so immense, it really defies capture through photographs. You simply have to experience what lies before and beneath you and sit on the edge of the rim. This is sort of the tower lookout, as you come in that eastern entrance, and some of the Navajo Nation artwork, that is in the area. They very much have preserved that. This is the hike down to Shushan Point. As you can see, it's not an onerous hike at all. It's a relatively easy kind of walk/hike in. And of course, then this looks out to the canyon, So, there's so few people in this area. It was amazing. We had feared the crowds. And in fact, we were the only ones, or there just a few people, for this particular shot. It was a timer shot on a tripod. We didn't even have someone else to be able to take the photo. It's mesmerizing to kind of ponder the canyon and how it was carved by the river, hundreds of years ago. So next up, we've got here a little bit of a video to take a look at.
Hi there, it's Mary Charlson here from CarryOnQueen.com. We're here at the Grand Canyon in Arizona, South Rim. You just can't appreciate the absolute grand vastness of this place to take it all in, but it's pretty darn spectacular. So we rode here on motorbikes, came in from Las Vegas and came up through the south area, came on the east entrance, and then we're now off to 89A to go up on the north side and up through Zion National Park. Just taking it all in right now. Boy, it's pretty darn amazing. Anyway, signing off, CarryOnQueen.com. Thanks for joining us.
So kind of fun, but also kind of fun to look at and realize that, hey, maybe I think I need a haircut when I see myself with slightly shorter hair in that. So from the eastern entrance, we headed back down towards, we came to the eastern entrance, then we went back towards the north area, towards Marble Canyon. You can see where we stayed in Tuba City the previous night. And we went via the Marble Canyon, kind of a more scenic route that goes towards the Vermilion Cliffs. The north entrance to the canyon isn't open later, it's not open this early in the season. It opens later in May, and that's due to frost and snow conditions, which are still kind of possible in the area. So this kind of the afternoon, we headed along Highway 89A, which is the photo which I chose for the intro of the slide, because it really kind of captures along the Vermilion Cliffs that the magnitude of the colors and the open expanse of road. And this was on the north rim, along towards the north rim of the Grand Canyon, kind of marveling at this kind of like the stunning red rock of these cliffs and the endless emptiness of the Navajo Plains. There's a few road stops along the way, including the Marble Canyon and the Lee's Ferry, where we met more hikers who convinced us as outdoor enthusiasts that trading the bike saddle for an extra day hiking would have been immensely worthwhile. But so goes the editing process of a time-constrained getaway. Next time, we'll plan to spend a little bit more time to be able to go hiking. The Lee's Ferry campground had lots of hiking, fishing, river rafting in the area. So again, like I said, I would love to have taken just a whole day to have done, a big hike as opposed to sort of smaller half-day hikes. And of course, there's always time for biker boy photos along the way, and biker babes. One of the many general stores along the route, lotto, guns, ammo, and beer, and a few other necessities. Oh, God, love America, eh? It just kind of gives you kind of the feeling of the grit of the type of things that you encounter along the way, which is just so kind of classic road trip Americana. Right? From the Marble Canyon, we headed out towards Zion National Park along Highway 89A. And it was kind of a slower scenic route again, less busy, which was what we preferred on a bike. Some of the kind of major kind of big truck traffic goes here and goes up through 89 on this route. But 89A was a little bit less busy. Again, you could take the road less traveled in a car or on a bike. We prefer that just because we were looking to get less big, big Mack truck kind of experience when you're on a bike. You kind of feel a little bit small when you're like that. So from there, we went out towards the entrance to Zion National Park. We happened to hit both Zion and the Grand Canyon on Earth Day. So the entrance was free, and even if you weren't American, which is fabulous. But again, we returned to Zion the following day to do some hiking, so we ended up paying for entrance that day anyway. But it was lovely to hit them both for free initially. So, that evening we caught a brilliant setting sun with its orange cast glow over the layered sort of stone cliffs of Zion National Park. It's spectacular with the way that everything kind of layers and the colors and the oranges and the earth tones against the blue sky. It's quite spectacular. As I said, Earth Day was free. We gladly paid, our entrance fee to return the next day to do some, stunning touring and hiking within the park along the Canyon Outlook Trail. Here's some just sort of colors and rock, the formations. It's just like you're just kind of in awe, kind of looking around at it. It's quite spectacular. And just against the blue sky, right? The orange and the blue complementary colors, just so cool. This is the tunnel. The 1.5 mile long Mount Carmel tunnel goes through Zion. It's quite something to experience, especially on a motorbike. So this was, the tunnel was built in 1930 by the Nevada Mining Corporation at a cost of $13 million, pretty big at the time. And the tunnel was originally designed for a Model T. The Model T width. So in 1989, the Federal Highways Administration kind of shored up the tunnel for safety and then seized the two-way traffic for safety reasons. Since then, the National Park Service has controlled the traffic going on the highway, and they do an alternating one-way pattern. Again, it's really quite something to experience as you're going through the park. So Zion's layered, rock and stunning mix of kind of warm orange and red colors. It kind of, as I said, complements that blue sky. It leaves, almost speechless everywhere you're looking. While there's no doubt that the Grand Canyon is impressive for its vastness, Zion is equally, if not more so, spectacular for its visual beauty. So that evening, we stayed in Hurricane, Utah. Just outside of Zion National Park. There is accommodation right outside the park entrance, but it's kind of expensive and it gets booked out a long time in advance. So Hurricane was not that much further along, and we simply then came back into the park the next day to do some hiking. So hiking next day, we went to the Canyon Lookout. Kind of east side of the Zion Mount Carmel tunnel is where you can kind of park the car. It's limited parking, so if you get there early, it's probably best. The hike itself is short and sweet. It's kind of like a 1 mile round trip. It's almost more of a walk than a hike. But then again, we're pretty hardcore hikers, so it was a walk for us. But it was a lovely, lovely kind of lookout, some stairs, it's a little bit of a climb, but not much of an incline. From the top, as you can see, it kind of goes along. It's quite spectacular. It's easily enough to hike. From the top, it goes out to a spectacular vantage point, which shows you the expanse of the Zion Canyon. If I had more time, if we'd had it, we would love to have to do the observation point hike, which is one of the more challenging hikes in Zion. It's an 8 mile round trip and a 2,000 foot elevation gain with switchbacks and panoramic views. Again, we'll leave that one for the next trip. Also, Angel's Landing is another iconic trail in Zion, one of the more popular hikes in the park. But again, you'd want to be allowing yourself a day to do this, not just trying to kind of pack it into a morning kind of hike. But it's just stunning when you see the rock formations and the color. Right? It's just spectacular kind of scenery, just to kind of take it all in. Well worth spending a couple of days in Zion if you could afford the time. As you can see, just this, everywhere was something artistic in terms of the rock formations, just naturally formed, and the colors, just loved it. And as you can see, the hike was well protected with rails, and so it was very, very easily accessible, even for people who are maybe not kind of hardcore hikers. More of the kind of the weekend walkers on the seawall could easily do this type of hike. Now, the last day on the bike saw us drive from Hurricane, Utah back to Las Vegas. And to do this, you descend the Virgin River Gorge on the I-15. It's a narrow strip of highway with pretty fast traffic and very little wriggle room in terms of sort of side to the rock as well as shoulders. And there's a large volume of big trucks traveling in excess of 120 an hour. So it's a little unnerving. And it was hot when we got back to Vegas, as you can see. It was smoking hot. And so we, well, the 3 previous days, had seasoned us to the road. The high-speed traffic and the winding descent without shoulders left us a little white-knuckled when we got into Mesquite, which is an Arizona kind of desert retiree town. And so that's where we decided to gas up. We grabbed some gin in anticipation of a stiff drink to recover once we hit the MGM Grand in Vegas. And so we topped off this memorable trip with a little rest and relaxation, a few great meals and some requisite Vegas entertainment. It was the perfect anecdote to a Route 66 and Grand Canyon adventure. And note to self, sometimes husbands and selfies don't belong in the same sentence. So we had some poolside fun. The warmth in April for these Canucks was welcome, and of course, the Vegas fountains, and also the Vegas fountain show. It's kind of like shock and awe treatment after being in the outside wilds of Zion and Grand Canyon. But as I said, most good stories start and end in Vegas. so we had some fun with that one. Whoops. Only need that one once. So this kind of shows us a road trip, a whole map of what we did. So we started in Vegas, out through Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam, down here to Kingman, where we spent the first night. Then we went along here on the old historical Route 66 to Seligman, through Williams and into Flagstaff, and then went north to Flagstaff. As I said, some people stay in Flagstaff and then go here up into the Grand Canyon through the south entrance. What we decided to do was go up and into Tuba City with the Navajo Nation Reserve, then went back in to the eastern entrance on the Grand Canyon, then north up through Marble Canyon and Vermilion Cliffs, and out here into Zion National Park. As I said, we went through the park, stayed in Hurricane that night, went back into the park, did some hiking, and then did our return all the way down here into Vegas that night. So it was a pretty jam-packed route, but certainly a really cool way to take in a lot in a circle kind of fashion and be able to circle back and spend some time in Vegas. So, the beauty of the open road and the unpopulated horizon is the perfect anecdote for any city dweller needing an escape. And so I'd highly recommend it if you ride. Touring by motorbike can't be beat in the area if you crave a mix of history, nostalgia, and the great outdoors, with a dash of civility and luxury to finish it off. So let's look at some tips. You can do this trip in a car too. But let's face it, a motorbike is more fun. And if you both ride, it would be fun to do it with 2 bikes and tandem. Plus, let's face it, you'd have more room for your gear. It's doable in 3.5 days. Yeah, it's 3.5 day ride. 4 days, three nights. With a couple days in Vegas at the end. But I'd recommend taking a few extra days to explore en route if you had the time. So 5 to 7 days would be ideal to give some time for exploring more and doing some hiking. I would definitely recommend booking accommodation ahead. We traveled in shoulder season and we still booked things ahead. And I know for a fact in Flagstaff, it might have been difficult. Tuba City, there's no way I would have gone to Tuba City without a reservation in advance, simply because if you got hooped, it's a long way out and a long way back to anything else. And certainly in Zion National Park, I couldn't even get accommodation that was really close. We had to go to Hurricane. So during the summer season, for sure, it would be booked out. Eastern entrance is definitely less busy, but as I've noted in that map, it's closed now due to COVID. So you definitely want to monitor local conditions if you were going to be considering that. I would plan activities around your interests. Right? Dining for foodies, if you're a foodie, I would stay in Flagstaff rather than Tuba City. I love Tuba City. I love the drive out there, but it's not a foodie destination. So plan around that if that's your thing. Hiking, if you're into hiking, certainly there's no shortage of options at the Grand Canyon. Zion has a lot more of kind of like day hike kind of things. Grand Canyon, if you wanted to go down and into the rim, I would kind of plan for 2 days, kind of down, stay, come back up. Again, not for the faint of heart. It's a mile down, which means it's a mile back up. But there's also fly fishing in the area, around when you get up around the Vermilion Cliffs area, Lee's Ferry area, there's a lot of fly fishing, river rafting, right? So there's lots of things that you could do as day activities in the area as well. And I'd suggest end your trip in Vegas, baby. Just you get a little bit of luxury at the end of it, especially when you've been on a bike, which kind of you feel like you need a little bit of luxury, even though you've been staying in nice, hotels and motels and whatnot. It just allows you to kind of tip it off. And put on a dress, go for dinner, a bit of dancing, have some fun. And you never know where two wheels will take you. The next summer, I did get my my motorbike learner's license, and I did it with a pro ride safety training here on the North Shore, where you do 2 evenings, kind of Thursday, Friday, a weekend of rider training at CapU parking lot, and then the 5th evening on the Monday, a supervised group ride. And then I went on to rent a 150 cc scooter to tour Barcelona with my son in July 2019. We were there for the World Roller Games, and he was competing for Team Canada at the time. And then when I got back from Europe, I decided to buy my own motorbike. And I have a Yamaha V-Star 250, a baby bike, but it gets me around, and I just kind of love the retro look of it. Who says you can't be inspired to learn something new over 50? And so now I ride, the two of us ride, we plan local trips together, and it's sort of been the beginning of another new adventure. So if you want to be inspired for other adventures, please sign up for my CarryOnQueen monthly e-newsletter. Go to my website, check out some of the past content. We'd love to have you as part of the community that follows along. And as I said, pack light, experience more. That's the way that I approach things as the Carry On Queen. And here's the website, CarryOnQueen.com, where you can find me. And thanks again for being part of this grand road trip. It's been my pleasure to take you along for a ride and to hopefully introduce you and inspire you to plan your next road trip. Thanks for having me.